Hey everyone, and welcome to episode number 34 of the Nerd Federation podcast. I am your host, Will Hernandez. This is your weekly podcast for some things pro wrestling and video games related. It is July 9th, and let me tell you guys something right now. It is hot as balls out there. Like, my goodness. It is so bad. If you're in the Northeast, you've been dealing with just heat like crazy for the past, I don't know, seems like a week and a half. And there is no AC in this room. I've gone over that a couple of times already on this show. And I'm still wearing a hat. And the reason why I am wearing a hat is because the sweat would be glistening off of, the light would be glistening off my sweaty head, and that's just not going to look good for video. So, going to try to do this podcast as swiftly as possible without rushing, because, and I don't want to rush because there are a lot of things to talk about this past week in pro wrestling. A lot of stuff to talk about. And I'm also decided that this week I am going to do a second podcast, record a second show, and talk about video games because there has been stuff going on there for me personally. And there have been things happening in the industry that I kind of just want to get off my chest and address. So look for another episode of the Nerd Federation podcast later this week. But first, some housekeeping. As I told you guys a couple of weeks ago, I have launched a second podcast. It is called Two Dummies That Just Watch, a sports podcast between friends. That is available now. Episode 1 is available now across every single major platform that is out there. I also have a Patreon, which is kind of crazy to think about. Not something I would have thought I would have done so soon. But if you want to check out the Patreon, it's patreon.com/Two Dummies Sports Podcasts. Just look for that. Again, patreon.com, Two Dummies Sports Podcast, and the D and the S and the P are all capitalized there. When you go there, you'll see that you'll be able to, you can subscribe for free. You don't have to pay if you don't want, but there is that option, the $3 option and the $5 option, if that's something that you so choose. You'll also see some of the socials there. Excuse me, Instagram, YouTube. I need to add the X account and so on and so forth. So that is up and running. The other thing I want to mention is that I was a guest this past week on the That Nerd Thing podcast with Morgan, who is the host there. And it's funny because that video is actually, I don't want to play that. That video is actually doing, I think, pretty well. It's already got 11 views on her YouTube channel. So that's, I think that's pretty cool. I mean, usually she gets about, still not a lot, 22 to 20. I'm not saying that as a bad thing because I don't get shit. So, but yeah, if you want to check that out, it was a great conversation with Morgan. We went through my fandom of pro wrestling and video games, and hopefully I provided some entertainment for folks. So definitely check that out. It's called That Nerd Thing, and the voice of fandoms, and her podcast is available across multiple platforms, just like this one is. So please go check out that episode. Please check out That Nerd Thing podcast with Morgan. Follow her all over the place. She has some really good interviews on there. It's really interesting to kind of see the people that she does get on there. And I have to say, she's inspired me to really, try to get some interviews for this show itself. So hopefully that is going to happen. So, as you'll see from the title of this podcast, I knew what I wanted to talk about mainly on this specific episode. And Money in the Bank happened on Saturday from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Fine, fine city. Been there 3 times myself. And we're watching Money in the Bank, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But watching Money in the Bank, and all of a sudden, John Cena's there. Like, what? What is happening? I don't think it was planned. In fact, I know it wasn't planned because everybody was very surprised that he was there. And immediately I knew what was happening because if you looked at the shirt that he had on, and it was just basically a reference to kind of one final time to do what he does. And, he gets to the ring and he basically says that he's retiring, that we're basically now on the John Cena retirement tour. There was a little bit of confusion, I think, initially, because he almost made it seem like, okay, he was retiring right then and there. That's not happening. He also made it seem like WrestleMania, this next WrestleMania coming up in Vegas, was going to be his last match. And we later find out that that's not going to be the case either. We're going to get mostly a full year of John Cena wrestling. So once that confusion was kind of cleared up in the aftermath of what happened Saturday, it's just kind of funny, kind of just taking a step back for me personally and thinking about, man, I've been watching John Cena from the very beginning, even before he was in WWE, because I don't know if people remember, but there was a documentary in the late 90s, early 2000s about the pro wrestling, independent pro wrestling scene. And it was on MTV. And they followed John Cena and some other wrestlers around. And if you guys remember, John Cena used to be called the Prototype, right? That was his gimmick. He was like the prototype wrestler. And he would kind of go around and I distinctly remember when he was in the supermarket, UPW, that was the promotion that he was in. He was in UPW as the Prototype. And if you look at, it was from 1999 is that particular, the MTV thing. And you look at what, distinctly remember him being in the supermarket and going to buy like a bunch of protein and him just filling up his cart with like red meat. It was really interesting because that was kind of what you did back then. You bulked up on, still now too, but you bulked up on red meat. And here you are, 2-3 years later, and he's making his debut in WWE with Kurt Angle with the whole ruthless aggression thing. And, we know the story by now. That whole thing happened and Cena was languishing, right? He was languishing for a while, almost got the axe, which is so fucking hard to believe. And then he comes out with the rapper gimmick. And basically the rest is history. But I do think for myself personally, when I think about John Cena and my history as a fan, as I want to make sure I get my timestamps right here, and think about how a large, what's the best way to say this? I would say my frustration with WWE in the aughts was basically around John Cena. The way Vince McMahon constantly put Cena in the spotlight, despite the fans being incredibly anti-Cena. We know, you guys know, the whole John Cena sucks. John Cena sucks. That was the whole backlash to Cena for so many years. And I think what was happening, and people are fully aware, I think, of the PG era that WWE was in and how Cena was like he became this thing for kids, and it just became so fucking corny. And it really turned me off. I would say that was really what started pushing in my head. Man, I wish that there was an alternative to WWE. I really do. I think that was when I started thinking to myself, I just wish there was something that was more adult oriented, something that did not mock my intelligence every single week. Because during that time, I mean, you had him going for a 10 to 15-year run where he was on top over and over and over and over again. And it just got tiring. How many times did we see Cena versus our Randy Orton? I mean, Jesus Christ. And I'm sure we're going to see it one more time as Cena goes through this kind of retirement tour. And that's fine. Like, I don't have a problem with that. And I will watch that because obviously those guys have a history together. But the constant of Cena just jamming Vince McMahon, shoving Cena down our throats, much in the same way he did with Roman Reigns. And people began to turn on Roman Reigns. And then finally Roman Reigns, changes his whole fucking character, basically does a heel turn in many ways. And that changed the trajectory of Reigns himself. But Cena never did that heel turn. And I remember loving that the rapper gimmick, man. I love that so much because that was a different WWE, right? That was a more mature WWE. It was the last vestiges of the Attitude Era. I mean, we know Cena said some untawdry shit, but you know what? I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't care. That stuff I don't care about. I really don't. I'm not this sensitive person to that kind of stuff because it was funny and it was meant to be taken as a joke. And I think that's what a lot of people get lost about when it comes to stuff like that is pro wrestling is really a caricature of real life when you think about it. I mean, it really is. So you've got the rapper gimmick and then slowly kind of transitioning into this, like, I don't know, this kiddie thing. And oh my God, I will give Cena credit for one thing though. And a lot of it really started happening when Kevin Owens showed up. If you guys remember the impactful debut of Kevin Owens on the main roster when he showed up, got in Cena's face, and did the pop-up powerbomb thing, and then stepped on the U.S. title in the middle of the ring. That was some impactful stuff. And if you've watched pro wrestling as much as I have and WWE as much as I have in the past, you know very well what I'm talking about. And I think in some ways that was a pivotal moment for Cena. And I'll tell you why. It was because you had this new breed of pro wrestler that was coming up into WWE via the old black and gold. Because what Triple H was doing back then, he was signing a shit ton of indie stars. We know that Kevin Steen had this long, career in Ring of Honor. And he was almost the same character when he got to NXT. So when you throw John, Owens onto the main roster and he's getting into the ring with Cena, Cena's style started to change a little bit because for so long he was the 5 moves of doom, which I kind of find funny considering some of the shit I'm hearing about Will Ospreay these days and how all his matches were the same. Bro, have you ever seen some of those Cena matches during his prime? It was the same shit all the time. It was the same match all the time. So keep that in mind because I'm going to get back to Will Ospreay very, very much later on. But I think that people like Cena and others that were coming up in WWE during that Kevin Owens time forced Cena to kind of change and add stuff to his repertoire so he wasn't as one-dimensional as he used to be. So I do give him credit for that. And listen, the guy did a lot of stuff with like Make-A-Wish Foundation things, and like kids loved him, and I get all that. Really, I really do get all that stuff. But for my personal tastes, him being in the spotlight for as long as he was really started to turn me off to the WWE product. And quite frankly, when he was giving that promo in the ring on Saturday during the pay-per-view, I said to myself, oh yeah, this is the reason why like I wanted an alternative, because it was that sappy, rah-rah bullshit that I just got sick of hearing, that I needed something new. I needed to hear something different. I needed to hear something more adult. And I definitely was not getting that from a John Cena-led WWE at that time. So, shout out to John Cena. I mean, I think at this point, people, even the quote-unquote haters, kind of recognize his long-lasting impression that he's going to have on the industry. The fact that you have the meme for him that still gets a chuckle out of a lot of people. So shout out to Cena. I'm going to be very curious to see how this whole thing goes down with his retirement and his farewell thing and all these matches that he has lined up. We know he's going to be at Royal Rumble. We know that he's going to be at WrestleMania. He'll probably be involved in Survivor Series, I would imagine, coming up in November. Probably not going to have anything going on at SummerSlam. But maybe you do something for him for SummerSlam for next year. But it kind of does sound like maybe Survivor Series 2025 might be his last match. Quote unquote last. Is he really going to retire? I don't know. He's 47, 48 years old. You're telling me that he wouldn't do another match in like 5 years? I don't know. You know, you guys know how pro wrestling is, right? Nobody's ever really retired, except for maybe The Undertaker and now Sting. Maybe those two guys are retired. Maybe Ric Flair is retired. Who the fuck knows with that crazy old bastard, what's going on in his mind. But I just hope that they're making this seem like such a big deal and you know, announcing it so far in advance that you would really hope that, yeah, it's going to be, this is it. We're going to get a little bit of him this year and for the almost all of next year, and then you call it a day. So I'm going to be really curious to see who his final match is. That's going to be interesting. I just hope it's going to be somebody that can use the rub. Maybe a Braun Breaker. He's like the first one that kind of comes to mind right now. Do you do something like that where it's somebody like him that could really use the rub from beating a Cena? I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be interesting though. So I'm sure I'm going to have more to say about that, especially as he does these matches as we go along and kind of see how he is in the ring. So definitely stay tuned for that. So as far as Money in the Bank as a pay-per-view and as a show, and there was one thing that I said on Threads after the show on Saturday, and I said that I truly believed that we had a great past week in pro wrestling. Really had a great 10 days, because while I didn't see Heat Wave, from everything that I read about that show and some of the clips that I saw online, and I'm going to get into that as well, because there's a lot to be said, I think, there. And a lot to be said. And I know I said I'm not going to comment on things I don't see, but I saw enough and have seen enough that I am going to comment on it. Anyway, it's not going to be the whole pay-per-view because I didn't watch it. And I will watch it at some point because I do want to see. So I said on Saturday how the past week, at that point, 6 days, that we had 2 banger pay-per-views. And for as much as I complain about AEW pay-per-views being so long. They do put on banger matches, and I went through the matches that I thought were worth going out of the way to see. Go back to episode 33, and I talk about there's like 4 to 5 matches that I think from that show that really stand out. That being said, when you look at a 5-card match like you had on Saturday, this is what Triple H likes to do, and I appreciate that. As somebody who does not have always time to sit there for 4 to 5 hours to watch a show, and I don't want to always have to sit down there 4 to 5 hours to watch a show. Time is precious, people. I mean, we know that. So part of that, like, to me, you're an A show already when you're only going, I think they went a little over 3 hours. And the only reason why it went that long was because of Cena. That was I think that was really the main reason there. But once I know you're just a 5-match show, I'm giving you an A for that. And then I'm going to work backwards on my whole ranking thing there. And I thought it was a really solid B plus show, an 8. Now, I saw people online giving it like a 3. Like, what the fuck? I'm sorry. And I don't think these were people who were like AEW diehards. I don't think that was the case. I think people were genuinely disgusted by some of the stuff on that pay-per-view, particularly the way the whole Money in the Bank cash-in situation went down in the show. And it looks like to me people are already so sick of this whole Punk McIntyre thing. And it's been going on for a while, folks. And we know that. And we know why it's been going on for a while, because Punk has been hurt. So you kind of have to drag it on. And we're most likely going to get their first match at SummerSlam. I've been seeing a lot of people speculate that it's probably going to be a 3 match type of trilogy between those 3. I don't know if people are going to go for that. I can tell you that right now from the stuff that I've read online. People are already sick of it. But I will say a lot of the angst from the show mostly had to do with the cash-in situation. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think one particular segment, because that's really what it was, how one particular segment should take a pay-per-view that I thought was an 8, and people want to say it's like down to a 3? That seems really fucking weird to me. I don't know. I just don't think that it was. And listen, again, 5 matches, and I felt as though every single match had substance to it. Everything from Sami Zayn retaining over Breakker, even though some people were convinced that Breakker was going to beat Zayn. I don't think it's time to put the belt on Braun yet so quickly after Zayn won it from Gunther. I like what people were saying about, listen, Gunther had, trying to say his name the right way. Walter had this long reign, and then here comes Sami Zayn to take it away from him. Do you want to then go ahead and turn around and take the belt off of Zayn so quickly? I don't think that's kind of the right way to kind of go about doing it. So I do like that Zayn won the match, and then maybe Breakker, maybe he gets a rematch in SummerSlam and wins it at SummerSlam. I don't know. Again, I don't follow the week-to-week stuff that's happening in WWE, but maybe that's just the way they'll plan it. So, loved the men's ladder match. I thought it was really well done. I actually thought it was a better ladder match than what we saw at Forbidden Door, to be quite honest with you. It was a little, I mean, I don't want to call something boring, but we know WWE doesn't do crazy fucking shit in the ring. Though, that women's ladder match, good Lord. And then maybe now we know why that the men were kind of pulling back. Maybe they weren't allowed to go crazy, was for that very reason. Sorry, guys, I'm watching the Met game, so I keep on moving my head here and getting off the microphone. Sip of water here quick. You got to stay hydrated, man, because it's so fucking hot. And I don't have AC in this room. So going back to, the men maybe pulling back because the women kind of went all out. That was fine. It was a controlled ladder match, and Drew gets the victory there, and I am going to get into that. Might as well get into that now. So Drew wins the briefcase, right? And I said it right away. I said, man, I can see a cash-in happening tonight. Why the fuck not? Why not just get it over with tonight? And that's exactly what happens. And I really thought that Seth Rollins and, God, I want to call him Punishment Martinez. Because that was what his Ring of Honor name was and what his name was in NXT when he first got there. Damian Priest. I thought that match was pretty good. But, man, that whole thing with Priest not kicking out of the pin right before McIntyre came out. Oh, man. Oh, that did not look bad. That looked bad, I should say. And then people want to shit on AEW. Come on, bro. This is why you don't do this. This is why you don't go around throwing stones. Because the same shit, WWE is not impervious to fuck-ups and to mistakes. It happens all the time. It's fucking pro wrestling. It's a live fucking show. Mistakes are going to happen. This is only a one-cut, one-take thing. You don't get multiple cuts here, guys. Mistakes are going to happen. Things are not always going to be as smooth as they are drawn up on the chalkboard in the back. They don't really do that. But you get the drift. You get the reference. That's why I hate this all botchamania shit. Like, oh, look at AEW's not safe. Bro, look at some of the shit that happened in that women's fucking match. That match got better as it got along, but come on, man. Come on. Are we being, this is what I mean by making bad faith arguments. Anyway, Drew comes out, is cashing in. Match turns into a triple threat. And then guess what? CM fucking Punk comes out and ruins the fucking day. And Damian goes ahead and retains the title. And man, the vitriol that I was seeing online afterwards, how people were just like upset. How you basically, people were, here's why people are upset. People were upset because they thought that they wasted the cash in and they didn't give it to somebody who was more well-deserving, like an LA Knight. That was the number one name that I saw. I think the fans, a lot of people they're not happy at the way LA Knight has been booked. They think he should have been champion by now. And having him win the briefcase, perfect opportunity, right? Win the briefcase, and maybe the guy cashes in, 3, 4, 5 months from now, and you have a nice feel-good moment, and you put the title on somebody who, in my mind, is way overdue for something. But what happens is that this Money in the Bank briefcase becomes just a storytelling device for Punk and for McIntyre. And it's not used in a way to get somebody over or to get somebody a championship. And I think that's where I have a problem with it. And I think that's where other people have a problem with it. And I kind of got into it with somebody on Threads over this. And part of it's my fault because I used the word prestige to describe the Money in the Bank briefcase. And that's not exactly correct. But to me, the concept of Money in the Bank is supposed to be exciting. And it's supposed to be in the execution of the cash-in and the drama behind the cash-in. Dolph Ziggler comes to mind. Seth fucking Rollins during WrestleMania. Nobody expected that. Like, nobody fucking expected that to happen. Especially after he lost earlier in the night to Randy Orton on that fucking awesome, man, that RKO was probably the prettiest pro wrestling movie you'll ever see in your life. Like, seriously. But then he comes in, and not only does Seth Rollins cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase in a match between Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, but he fucking wins the match. Completely unexpected. You're full of shit if you thought that was going to fucking happen that night. No fucking way did I think that was going to happen. And that's what I'm talking about. That is the beauty of that briefcase and that stipulation, because you can use it in such a way that you can really surprise people and really make somebody or her or him into maybe a bigger star than what they are. And I think that's why people might be a little bit upset about the way the cash-in was used this year as, again, a storytelling device for McIntyre and Punk's feud. It's over, folks. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. So maybe now you got to focus your attention on Tiffy time, because she obviously won the women's MITB match. And boy, that match started off really, really rough. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. That one move that Zoe Stark did where she did the, I don't even know what you call it, into the ring, and she hit her head, the back of her head on that ladder. My God, that was just fucking awful. Awful. And the problem there for me is, like, once mistakes, I don't even want to call them mistakes. Once things start looking that sloppy, my mind starts to tune out of the match. But they saved it. I'll give them credit. The women saved it. They went on, and that match got better as time went on. And then you had that spot between Io Sky and Zoe Stark. And oh my God, that was just fucking brutal. That could have gone so wrong in so many different ways that I just don't know, like, you know, I don't know where, you know, it just could have gone really, really wrong. That whole move there could have gone really, really, really badly. So, yeah, again, they managed to really recuperate there, and it was good. I thought I enjoyed it more as time went on. And then you had the main event, which was kind of an overbooked schmaz, and they kind of knew it was going to be. And again, there, I think people were a little disappointed that we didn't get a surprise there. Like maybe a Roman Reigns, though. Who knows? Somebody else showing up, Hikuleu, Talatanga, which, God, I really hope that they don't use that name for him, because I think that that's fucking awful. But again, you look back at that match, at that pay-per-view, and I thought it was a really well done show. I was entertained. If I'm sitting there, and here's the thing, this is where a lot of times that I think people really dive too much into some of this stuff. I was entertained. Number one. Number two, I am not as close to the WWE product as I am to the AEW product. So I look at AEW shows with a different lens, because I am very in tune to what is happening in AEW, and I'm not in tune to what is happening in WWE. So I think that enables me to enjoy pay-per-views a little bit more, because I come into these shows with zero expectations other than I just hope I'm entertained for the next 2.5, 3 hours. And I was. And I think that's kind of the big difference, at least from me personally, where I can kind of watch these shows and kind of sit back and be like, oh, that was really good. That actually came across well. This 5-match card really came across well, and I really enjoyed this show. Meantime, you're on social media both during and after, and it's just complaining. And it just, you don't see a lot of people enjoying what they're watching. And again, nobody hates pro wrestling more than pro wrestling fans. I've said that a million times. It's just the God honest truth. That's just it. So I thought it was a really good show. Again, it's not enough to get me to watch every week. It's just so hard. Guys, it's so hard for me to commit to more pro wrestling. And I tried to get more into TNA, and I failed miserably for that. Really. And I'm really only watching Dynamite now. Though I did watch a little bit of Collision this past week. But AEW Collision. Guys, I got another podcast now. So who knows if this podcast is even going to survive. But no, keep listening. Anyway. So that's gonna basically wrap up my thoughts about Money in the Bank from this past Saturday. So I did not watch. I will say right now, I did not watch NXT Heatwave. Did not watch it. So I don't really have a lot to say, but I did watch clips from one match, and I will get into that a little bit later because I think it's relevant to the stupid conversations that I'm hearing from some of these fans, quote unquote fans. So Ethan Page won the NXT title Sunday at Heatwave. Basically, guy leaves AEW, and just a few short weeks later, he is an NXT champion. Coming into the match, Page did an interview he was on the Good Brothers podcast with Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows. And listen, let me start off by saying, you got to stop taking what these people say so personally. Really? Why do you care? Why? Anyway, here's the quote. And again, he's in response to a question, okay? When asked about his first day in NXT, this is a write-up, by the way, from WrestleZone by Matt Black. It was on yahoo.com, which is kind of crazy to think about. Anyway, when asked about his first day in NXT, Page took the opportunity to compare how things are done in WWE and how things are done in his former employer, All Elite Wrestling. Granted, he did not say AEW. Anyway, quote, pretty crazy. I went from somewhere that was so chaotic and unorganized to a place that, I'm still learning because I'm still so new here, but this is a machine and it's incredible. It feels good to not feel like I have to do everything myself, Ethan Page said. To have people that want to see me succeed is kind of mind-blowing as you hear the airplane going by. Anyway, I live by an airport, guys. I'm 17 years in. I still feel like I don't know what to say. I don't want to say the word green, but like I've essentially had to do everything myself. I'm pretty much taught myself how to wrestle. And now I'm like, oh, there's geniuses here all day that I can be like, does this suck? Okay, well, tell me how to do it better. And they will. Now, I don't think Page was purposely putting down shitting on AEW like a lot of other people say that he was. Because I've seen the comments on social media, particularly on Threads. Oh, now Ethan Page's true colors are coming out. This, that, and the other thing. He was never really good. This is the shit that I'm seeing on social media from these AEW fans. And I'm an AEW fan. Here's the thing. We've heard about these issues with AEW before. That they are chaotic, that things are chaotic, that things are unorganized, that people are sitting in the back and catering, not having a plan, and are asked to come in right the day before for TV stuff. And then they sit there in the back and they don't get used. This is not anything new. So I don't understand why people were getting so bent out of shape when Page was giving his opinion on a situation. By the way, it's something that's based on stuff that we don't see. We're not back there. So I'm going to tend to take him at his word, especially when that has been the rumor that has been percolating around when it comes to AEW. And if you have that much of a concern about about people coming out and saying these things, you know what? Go DM Tony Khan and ask him to run a tighter ship. As simple as that. Otherwise, I don't understand why people are getting themselves all huff and puff about what wrestlers are saying about AEW. Just enjoy what AEW is putting on, and that's it. Right? You guys claim to not care about the backstage stuff, but yet here you are commenting on what Ethan Page said, who was being brutally honest, and now he's being shit on because of that. Maybe that's a bad term to be using with him in the WWE. But seriously, guys, like, come on. I don't understand why people let this stuff get to them. Like, you're getting paid by AEW to be mad, or you're getting paid by WWE to be a troll. Like, I just don't understand. So, good for Page, man. Listen, somebody to bring up the point. You know, he was in TNA and then AEW, and nothing happened, really. And now he is, well, let me not say nothing happened in TNA, because before he was left, he was tag team champions with Josh Alexander. They had a pretty good run there, I think, at the end. But, you know, it didn't work out ultimately with TNA. It did not work out with AEW. There's no reason why he can't go back to those places. We've seen it happen time and time again. But I'm personally, for me, as somebody who has seen this guy wrestle on the independent scene when I was living in Chicago, I'm happy that this guy has gotten a chance on this stage to do something great. So good for him. I don't have anything bad to say about Ethan Page. I really don't. Now, let's talk about gymnastics. Let's talk about movesets in pro wrestling, because my God, people have lost their shit over some of this stuff. And you know, there are two people that I blame mostly for this, and that is Mr. Dave Meltzer and Mr. Brian Alvarez. I really wish, let me start with that first. I really wish that those two guys would understand the power, I guess, that they wield in the minds of some fans, and really kind of think about that and think about their opinions, because their opinions are regurgitated over and over again, retweeted, reposted, dissected, mocked, cheered, whichever way you want to go. Those guys, I almost feel like that they do more harm. This is where I think Bischoff is right. I think that those two guys do more harm than good when it comes to pro wrestling. Now, that being said, apparently they had a problem with the way the Kalani, Jordan, and Saul Raka, sorry guys, match came across at Heatwave. Now, I went back and I watched a 6-minute clip of that match. And I watched it, I was like, oh, I thought it was good. I thought what I saw was good. And you know what? It's something that you see fairly regularly on AEW television. Hell, it is something you fairly see regularly on TNA. Here's where the issue comes in. This is where the whole fucking everything was a fucking shitstorm over what these two said, because they did not like what they saw. They thought it was too gymnasticy, too phony. But yet, they're creaming over their pants about Will Ospreay, who does similar stuff. Say what you want about Ospreay, and I know some people don't like him. I know some people don't like that style. He's the best at that style of pro wrestling. There is not even a fucking question about it. He is the best at that particular style. Period. Stop. Whether you like it or not, he's the best in that style. Again, qualifier there. In that style. So for Alvarez and Meltzer to come out and shit on that match with those two women on Sunday, I just don't think that's being genuine. Now, this is where the whole thing comes up with the style of pro wrestling. And again, there was absolutely nothing wrong with their match on Sunday. From the clips that I saw, I was like, shit, now I got to go back and watch this whole fucking match because it looks cool. Do I want to see that all the time? No. But here's the great thing about pro wrestling shows. There's something for everybody. There's brawling. There's more realistic takes on pro wrestling. Then you got the gymnastics-y stuff that you don't sell when you get hit. Pro wrestling is supposed to be like this buffet style thing that you take from here and there, so there's something for everybody on a show. And that's what this match was from everything that I've gathered about that particular show. There is room on the menu for Will Ospreay versus Rey Fenix being on the same card as Bryan Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr., who both wrestle a completely different style than Phoenix and Ospreay. That they're like grappling, making shit look real on submissions. That's awesome too. I know some people like to shit on Braun Strowman, but I think Braun Strowman actually had some decent matches as a big man in WWE because they were entertaining. That can be pro wrestling too. And it could be entertaining. Again, there is room for everything in pro wrestling because pro wrestling is an art form and art comes in different forms. I will say that until I'm blue in the fucking face. Pro wrestling is art and can be anything you want it to be. It can be gymnastics-y. It could be realistic. It could be horror and it can be comedy. I wish more people would get that through their thick fucking skulls. Because then we would have less people complaining on the internet and less miserable pro wrestling fans out there ruining it for everybody else. Here's the other problem that I saw that brought out the fucking morons on social media. Saying that, oh, Will Ospreay, every single one of his matches is the same. They're choreographed. Bro, it's pro wrestling. All the matches are choreographed. Come on. People don't know what they're arguing. People don't know the words to use in their disparaging remarks, and that's a fucking problem. Because pro wrestling is choreographed. That's just the way it is. Now, is Ospreay too gymnastics-y sometimes? Absolutely. Sure he is. But you know what? And here's the way I look at that Ospreay matches and the way I look at the match from Sunday. And and this is going for a lot of people. The pro wrestlers today are way more athletic than anything we have seen previously. They just are. It's the human evolution. That's what it comes down to. And the same thing goes on for the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball and soccer and hockey and Olympic sports, MMA. Guys are just more athletic now. Women are just more athletic. Men are just more athletic. Why not let that athleticism come out in their pro wrestling matches? That's what I don't understand. When you were watching Roca and Jordan on Sunday, even from the short clip that I saw, and I've seen both of them perform before, but to see them both in the match at the same time is like, God damn, these women are athletic as fuck. Really, really athletic. And now we're saying it's a bad thing. Now we're saying don't use what brought you to the dance. No, Will, you're doing too much flippy shit. No, Rey Fenix, you're doing too much lucha shit. What are we doing here? Here's the other thing, too. Why are these WWE fans complaining about everything an AEW does? If you don't watch AEW, then why are you complaining about it, man? You should be singing the praises of people in WWE, but yet you're sitting there and shitting on stuff that you don't even watch. And that's the problem. That continues to be the problem with the modern day pro wrestling fan. Y'all are fucking miserable fucks. A lot of you are very miserable. And it shows. It shows online how miserable you guys are. I feel sorry for you. Really. I really do. Well, I'm taking it. I'm taking it deep right now. Anyway. So, AEW. And now this is where I'm going to end. I'm going to end things this week. And I think the biggest thing that stood out to me from the past week was MJF and this, I guess you want to call it a heel turn. I don't even know what you really refer to it as. And Britt Baker and Mercedes. Let's take the latter first, because I thought that segment with those two, first of all, when you hear shit when wrestlers say you know, had something like a seizure, and it's just like, that's like some scary shit. And as somebody who is one of my favorite wrestlers out there, I'm glad that she's doing better and that we have her 100%. At least I'm going to assume that she's 100%. So I thought that whole thing, the whole segment of her in the ring and doing what she did, and then Mercedes crashes the party and all that stuff, and I thought that was really well done. But there was one thing that got pointed out to me by my buddy Eric that I kind of like, oh yeah, you're right, when Mercedes mushed Britt in the face and Britt didn't fight back. I thought that was a little weak. Everything else about that segment was great, except for that part. I'm sure we're going to, I don't know how things are going to play out now. I'm going to assume that we're going to get Mercedes versus Britt at All In London. That's going to be my assumption. We shall see. It seems like that should be the path that they take, but I'll be curious if we get Britt in the ring before that, because I think I want to see her in the ring. I really do. I really, really do. So let's see what happens there. And then MJF and this whole evolution to try to get him to be the heel again. And I think it worked. That was kind of the one thing I was a little concerned about with. They had him beat the shit out of Danny Garcia after Garcia lost to Ospreay on Wednesday for the international title. And MJF made it seem like he was buddy with Garcia, but, you know, MJF was a scumbag, as he likes to say, and beats the shit out of Garcia, bloodied up, Menard too. So you had that happen on Wednesday. So then I watched Collision on Saturday. I watched it on delay, and MJF comes out to cheers in the beginning. And I think that's going to happen when you want to see somebody you might not have seen in person before and somebody who's a hot act. I get that. Like, I understand that. So he goes on to cut a heel promo. And by the time everything is all over, people are booing the shit out of him. So you've got a really interesting thing now where you're putting MJF up against Garcia, and you're getting Will Ospreay involved. So we're seeing hopefully a true heel MJF, because quite frankly, when he came back, it was a little like, what is going on here? Like, is he? I don't understand. AEW and quite frankly WWE are terrible with fucking heels these days. Like, we don't get that anymore. And I prefer MJF as the chicken shit heel, and that's the best MJF is the chicken shit heel. So we'll see. We'll kind of see how that all plays out. But I don't know. I feel like things in AEW are just kind of weird, and then they can't seem to. You've got makings of good stories and good storylines. I truly do believe that. You got a feeling that Hangman's going to win on Wednesday. I think he's going to win on Wednesday. So you're going to continue to feud between him and Swerve, which is always entertaining. And you're going to start this whole thing with Mariah May will now play out between now and All In. So you know that she's going to win on Wednesday as well. So there are some predictable things happening that are going to happen, I think, in AEW. But I don't know. I got to say, I'm getting a little bored with them. I have to be completely honest. Like, I'm getting a little... Things are getting stale, and I just kind of keep on waiting for something like big to happen. And I don't know if that's Omega coming back or what. I don't know. There's something that's just not hitting with me with AEW right now, and I can't put my finger on it. I'm gonna have to take a sip back. When I watch Dynamite on Wednesday, I think I'm going to have to really take some notes and really think about that and come back to you guys next week with a better answer. But there is something that I think is quite not right about AEW, and I need to figure out kind of what that is. But anyway, that's going to do it for this week. Guys, it is so hot. I am sweating my ass off. I'm glistening. My body is glistening. I'm going to have to jump back in the shower now. So, yeah, listen, thanks for the support. I'm hoping if you're new here from coming over from, that nerd thing, please let me know. 'Cause I'm curious if people you're either new to pro wrestling or something like that. I would love if you reached out. There's a way to email me. There's an option to email me. There should be an option to email me. So please reach out. You can reach out on Instagram as well or on Threads. So please let me know about that. And yeah, if you're into sports, I think the sports podcast is something that people will want to listen to because it's me and my buddy. It's a co-hosting situation, and I think that we're funny. I don't know, tooting my own horn, especially my buddy Lee J. So check that out as well. It's called Two Dummies That Just Watch, a sports podcast between friends. And I should be recording a video game focused episode this week. Probably going to do that on Thursday or Friday. So look out for that. Probably over the weekend at some point. But yeah, thanks again for being here. I appreciate it. And I will see y'all next week for the Nerd Federation podcast. Take care. Bye-bye.